Hello, everyone. I am delighted to welcome three seasoned and senior enterprise architects with me today. Peter from ASDA, Al from Invesco, and Venus from Cabinet Office. And I am Brandon Wilkins from Ardoq. All of our guests today come from diverse industries with differing business objectives, but they do, however, share the commonality of establishing a maturing EA practice, and of course, being valued Ardoc customers. So thank you three in particular. It's great to have you. To start us off, maybe an opening question for each of you. Peter, can you give the audience a brief introduction of you and your org, as well as the enterprise architecture practice in place, maybe kind of where it started from and where it is now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brendan. I'm Peter Grayley, Senior Solutions Architecture Manager at ASDA as part of Digital and Tech. I look after a team of application solution architects and also elements of practice, including tooling. I'm particularly close to our Ardoq implementation. For those that don't know ASDA, we're the number three grocery retailer in the UK. We have 1,200 shops, or slightly more, and a large online business, and around about 40 distribution centers and 150,000 colleagues. So it's a pretty substantial business, and we serve about 18 million customers a week. We also have approximately 1,000 line of business applications, and we have a pretty mature architecture function that's been established for more than 10 years. But it's evolved over time, and we continually look to improve. We have the kind of things you'd expect an architecture framework. We have roles defined, EAs and SAs, enterprise architects, solution architects. And we have teams that are split into supporting business domains and platform domains. And we have around about 50 architects, but that all changed about 4.5 years ago when we divested from Walmart.
Mm.
Part of Walmart for 20 years, very heavily dependent on some of their services and their applications, particularly in our core functions. And the divestiture meant that we had to pretty much reinvent our landscape. We had to touch every application and replace a lot of the really key applications in the landscape. So a very, very major undertaking, big program of work that has just completed successfully, thank goodness. So last
Wow.
month we converted the final stores and the final distribution centers. So we say that we moved from blue to green, and we're all green now. Which who wouldn't want to be green? So yeah, it's a really positive position to be in. Um, it was a very intense period. We grew our architecture team during that divestiture to over 100 architects, so more than doubled. And Ardoc really helped us in that our previous EA tool really wasn't up to the job, and we used Excel for a while to manage
Mm.
our authoritative definition of all the applications in our landscape and what we were going to do with them. But that failed all the time. It got corrupted and it was just impossible to manage. So Ardoc, having a sort of robust industrial scale tool to help us define our authoritative view of the landscape and all the applications in the landscape, and a kind of 5 Rs model, retain, replace, rehost, and so on, of what we were going to do during divestiture, was really critical, really core to the success of that program. Yeah, so really vital for us.
That's fantastic. Great overview, and congratulations on wrapping up the divestiture. I know that's been
Thank you.
a quite a long time coming. Al, how about you? Love to hear a little bit of your story as well as Invesco's.
Yeah, sure. I'm head of business architecture at Invesco. Um, for those who don't know, Invesco is an investment management firm based in Atlanta, Georgia. Um, we have about, I think it's $2 trillion of assets under management at the moment, with clients in about 120 different countries. Um, and yeah, it's we're managing both retail investments and institutional investments. So that's Invesco in a nutshell. From an enterprise architecture point of view, as with everything, it's always existed before, but in its current form, we've been running about 3.5 years with this enterprise architecture and leadership team. Um, the initial focus was really about bringing in strong architecture governance. And alongside this, we really wanted to make sure we had better architecture across our main applications and technology platforms. I came into this about 2.5 years ago, specifically to focus on the business architecture side, and introduce and lead the efforts on bringing that piece in. There'd been some previous attempts, as I said, about standardizing things like business capabilities, but essentially from a business architecture point of view, we were able to start from scratch, and start to think about how we consider business strategy and the business impacts alongside the technology change that my colleagues make. So we have 5 business architects at the moment, growing the team soon, hopefully, alongside about 15 or 20 colleagues who cover the other aspects of architecture. So data architects, technology platform architecture, and application architecture. And really what we're looking to do now is look at how we scale this to enable us to partner more closely with the core domains across our business. So we split our business into 3 main domains of investments: distribution, which covers all the sales, marketing, digital client engagement, and the corporate functions. So part of this involves how we standardize and mature our profession of architecture. So we're looking at things like training, job titles, grades, training pathways, those type of things. But ultimately, what we're doing is we're aiming to be involved in any change conversation right from the first thought of doing something. So we want to engage with the business right up front and be part of those conversations. And we've seen great results where we're doing this already. We're just looking to be more proactive and make this a more consistent way of engaging architecture. Hopefully, fingers crossed, and we're just starting on this journey now, but this is going to give us better results across all areas of architecture, not just from a business architecture point of view. So we'll start with a clear understanding of the business problem and the business outcomes, and then hopefully it smooths the path for the business teams through the governance process, as we have the right people in place and the right architecture in place to steer them right from the very start. So actually governance isn't really a policing activity anymore. It's we can just guide them through that process nice and smoothly.
That's great. We'll come back to you maybe a little later in the presentation today, because very interested in some industry-specific challenges and how you've handled those. Last but not least, Venus, welcome. Please feel free, introduce yourself.
Thank you. So I'm Venus Bailey. I'm a principal enterprise architect at the Carbon Office. So our journey of enterprise architecture is similar to Invesco, about the same time. That interestingly, I was the first enterprise architect that was brought in to the Carbon Office about 4 years ago, at the organization level. So we did have some enterprise architect at the program level, but not the organization level in Carbon Office. So you can find out more about Carbon Office on the public channel. It's not a secret. So we are quite a federated organization. We have more than 40 business units. We are constantly changing, as people know. Today we catalog about 600, 700 applications in the Carbon Office, but our estate is quite federated and distributed. So 4 years ago, we started the enterprise architecture journey. And initially, we focused on technical governance and also the enterprise assets repository. So before we had that, obviously, we didn't really understand the estate. We couldn't control our estate very effectively. There was lots of duplicated technology and also uncontrolled risk. So those are the challenges. I think quite similar to a lot of organizations started the enterprise architecture journey with us. I'm pleased to say, like, during the 4 years, we had quite significantly mature the functions, we now have a running technical design authority that is joined up with other capital office governance structures, and effectively running. And also we have matured our enterprise asset repository to a point where we can actually use the data to rationalize our estate and also make some informed decisions along the way. So to me, it was quite a big success, and yeah, definitely still have quite a long journey to go. It's never going to end, hopefully. But yeah, we have done some good achievement over the 4 years.
Thanks, Venus. The maturation of Cabinet Office's EA practice has been great to see. So thank you for sharing part of that story. So in terms of big picture overviews, that was wonderful. Let's move specifically into your respective organizations and industries. Peter, we'll go back to you. How has your EA practice changed from the days maybe Ardoq helped support ASDA's divestiture from Walmart to how it is today? Can you share a little bit more there?
Yeah, absolutely, Brandon. Hopefully, we're going to be returning to a more kind of normal way of working. I think the divestiture was a very intense and unusual period, and we almost had to put a lot of business strategy elements on hold whilst we just rebuilt a landscape. But now, yeah, we're pivoting away from that. We've shrunk quite a lot. We're back down to about 50 architects from over 100. And we've acquired an enormous amount of collateral, really, this information that the huge program allowed us to document about our landscape. So we've got, a good understanding of all the applications. We've built a business capability model and linked the applications to that. We've used Ardoq as well to help us around an emerging move towards product centricity and defining the org structures, the delivery teams and their responsibilities in relation to the applications. We documented all the flows between applications as well. Those are actually mastered outside Ardoq in Jira, and we import that data regularly. So we're able to visualize how applications connect to one another. And I think one of the key things we want to do as a smaller team is to get ourselves into the position where we can efficiently keep that information up to date. That's really critical for it to, maintain credibility and so on. So my vision for that is that we use the solution design process. Any changes that we intend to make to the landscape, that those are identified and described in data in Ardoq prior to approving those design changes, and then that helps keep our view of the landscape completely up to date. We're also integrating it with ServiceNow and passing the applications and the capabilities into that tool, working closely with our business architecture team, hopefully working on integrating process and so on as well. And a big focus for us is technical debt. We documented technical debt. It would be nice to think with a new landscape, shiny new landscape, there'd be no technical debt. Of course, that's not the reality. We had to make compromises in order to deliver the pace of change. So 4 and a bit years to replace close to 1,000 applications is not an easy thing to do. So we have about 750, I think, technical debt items that we've described, and we're using Ardoq to visualize those and understand where the impact is, and bring those in business reviews into our business audience to help prioritize the technical debt and make sure that it's considered whilst we're also looking at business strategy. We're going to be using the out-of-the-box solutions as well. So strategy to execution, app rationalization is something we're really interested in starting to look at as well, modeling total cost of ownership. So much more kind of regular way of working is what we're wanting to pivot into, but using this collateral of information we've now got and aiming to keep that up to date. I think we've really appreciated during the 3 years we've been using Ardoq the pace of change, the fact that lots of new solutions have dropped very regularly. It's hard to keep in touch with them sometimes and communicate to our stakeholders. And the customer service has just been stellar. Had so much fantastic help from customer service, so I really want to call that out as well.
Really appreciate that, Peter. And it's great that despite the different industries that the three of you are in, you mentioned technical debt and everyone's head starts nodding. So,
Yeah.
you can see the challenges and how they are sometimes unique to certain industries, but there are many like tech debt that spans across no matter what vertical you're in. Al, how about you? How are you planning to mature your EA practice further and meet the increasing complexities of financial services? Because that's a really demanding sector.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of increased complexity, both like the rapid technology change, client expectations, and like constantly moving regulation as well. So, yeah, we've got kind of several areas we're looking at in terms of maturity. I talked a bit about our engagement model earlier, so I'll give you a bit more detail on that. But really, one of the things we're going to do is partner with our different business areas, get the engagement through our business architecture, and just be more proactive in architecture decisions as a whole. So we're already working with several of our key business areas now, both in the front office space and in our corporate area, looking at how they operate, how they want to work or need to work in the future, and then building out the roadmaps. And when I say roadmaps, we're trying to focus on capability improvements and the priority business outcomes that they want to achieve, rather than just the kind of what's the future for each system view of the world. So we're trying to plan it from a business point of view and really show how the business can evolve and meet outcomes, as well as any kind of application and technology changes. Beyond engagement model, though, things like the EU DORA regulation that's come along recently, and you mentioned regulatory change, and this is one that's hit lots of us, I think. This made us realize that enterprise architecture needed to be much more than focused on just our technology estate. So we've really moved into areas such as operational resilience and risk, and actually what role can we play in how those work. One of the areas we've really been able to leverage Ardoq in is how we build out the relationships between that type of data and the rest of the architecture. So previously, this all sat in different systems and was never easy to view. And actually, we got pulled in with lots of other people whenever there was a request from a regulator to get some views of that data. Ardoq's really allowed us to create those relationships and build out those views. So, by making sure we've got the good view across policies and risks and the controls we have in place around those risks, and then linking that to the people and the systems that provide the controls, we've kind of moved architecture into a new area for us. And it gives us a better understanding of any impacts of system changes, highlighting the importance of tech debt, as we've mentioned elsewhere, and maintaining some of the controls. And that's been really important in making the case for actually investing in some of those controls as well. Because actually, if you can't see the relationship and the risks that certain systems are addressing, it's very difficult for people to understand that it's a priority to maintain some of these things. So that's really moved us forward and enabled us to show how the kind of people, process, technology all come together in managing risk for the organization as a whole. And I mentioned process there. That's kind of the final piece I'd mention here. We, as architects, we often don't really think about process. So certainly in my experience, we've often said, oh, the business analysts can deal with the process, or we've got the business areas themselves mapping the processes. One of the things we're doing at the moment is looking to run a trial with ShiftX in Ardoq, so your new AI-powered process module. Because really what we want to do is bring that process information into Ardoq and just make it easier for everyone to first of all map the processes, but then also for us to relate that to the rest of the architecture. So as architects, we might not need to know the detail of the process and what sits within it, but actually what we want to know is that process exists, we've got it mapped, and actually what's the impact of of any change either on that process, or if that process changes, what's the impact on the rest of the architecture. So yeah, they're the key areas we're looking at, and that's really kind of enabling us to have a much broader view across architecture than kind of how we thought about it before, just in terms of data, systems, business. We've brought in some other elements to it.
That's really exciting. I'm glad you shared about the pilot. The exciting times, and hopefully it gives better visibility across all areas, break down silos, etc. So really looking forward to seeing how that goes. Venus, how about you? How has Ardoq helped leverage some of the agile practices to enable quick responses and some of these new government imperatives? There's a lot going on in your part of the world.
Yeah, definitely. Brendan, I feel like that looking at my notes, most of my point has been echoed, already mentioned by Peter and Al already. I echo a lot of the things that has been said. So for example, with Peter is about keeping the data update is the challenge, and integration to systems is important, right? You want to have the central point of view where you have the join up oversight of all the related data in the center. And tech debt is also another thing that we are proactively trying to address as well. And so already mentioned, Carbon Office is a very federated, loosely coupled and complex estate. And we have constant changes, just like you mentioned. So having an enterprise asset repository, having a source of truth is really helping us to have a clear picture of what we own and where we should be focusing our investment and effort, and moving in pace as well with the changes that we encountered. So Ardoq definitely allow us to visualize, manage, and keep the inventory of our architecture and digital estate up to date. And so before we had the tool, we had difficulty keep track of what we have and understanding where our critical risks are. But now we have a single place for all the data and relations as well that let us rationalize our estate to drive informed decisions and strategy and change forward. So one of the instances is government. There's a government initiative of tackling legacy technology. So again, quite publicly, you can find information about it. So we have used Ardoq to capture and audit and rationalize our legacy systems and tech debts in our bespoke applications. So this helps us to prioritize our funding resources, spot any gaps that we need to address immediately, and make smarter decisions about our estate. So we also rely on, similar to what Al mentioned, to understand how our applications depends on capability, business initiative, contracts, technologies, and business models as well. So having that transparency really speed up our response time to new government initiative, helping us to keep our architecture function flexible and aligned with changing priorities as well. So now if somebody want to know, so for example, I get that very frequently, like, do you know anything about these systems? I can just send them a link and say, go and find it out yourself. It's all documented here, captured here. So yeah, it is a very useful tool in my perspective.
That's great. Teach them how to fish. So that's good. So Venus, maybe we'll stay with you, and let's go back to the early days, if you will. Everyone likes hearing about successes, but to be honest, there's a part of us that also likes hearing about the things that maybe didn't go 100% correctly. So if you think back, what was perhaps the biggest misstep when implementing or evolving some of the EA practices? Can you share maybe a learning moment that you had with us today?
Yeah, I can say that maturing enterprise architecture practice was definitely a journey full of lessons learned and try and error as well. There are a lot of frameworks we can follow, but adapting the frameworks to the context that you have are always the challenge behind.
Mm.
Um, so our strategy today and our team formation is quite different from when we first started. So initially, we focus on capturing the data that we already had, quite technology focused. Like you had to start somewhere, basically, without very clearly defined specific goals. We had a very small team, and we just used the small team to capture all the data that we have and keep it alive as such. So we moved quickly at first, but then the progress stalled. It didn't expand or scale as quickly as I envisaged, and at the time needed a strategy to change the direction of travel or think about how to scale up the enterprise architecture function. So I think the key lessons learned for me, the two key ones, is we now focus, we are more outcome driven.
Mm.
Like we focus on one initiative or clear outcome at a time to mature our function. So, for example, a legacy technology initiative. So we define some achievable outcomes to achieve that, and focus one outcome at a time and get the adoption of the practice, the process, and the tooling during the journey. Is now a multidisciplinary team delivering the outcome versus at the beginning, we just have enterprise architects and architects delivering the outcome. So we make sure that every elements are in place, people, governance, process, tools, supporting the objective. And also we get stakeholder buy-ins with every initiative we have. The second key lesson learned is data democratization. So relying two people to maintain a repository is not a very sustainable way of enterprise architecture. So now we have moved from centrally capturing the data into giving the responsibility back to the business and service owner. So they are responsible for updating their own data. And to me, we have moved from one team knowing everything. Now is a collective effort from everyone. And there are information in Ardoq that our central team doesn't know about, and now we can just go to the repository to find out. So those are my key lessons learned from the 4 years journey.
Wow, thank you. So by giving everyone the responsibility of maintaining and curating the data, responsibility and awareness of the problem increased. Thanks for sharing, Venus. Peter, how about you?
Yeah, I think I'm sure we've had lots of missteps, but the sort of the big aha moment, I think, was around the culture shift that's needed, particularly in my team of solution architects, around modeling through changing data rather than drawing stuff. That is quite a culture shift, and I'd say we're still working through that, but I think there's a lot of commitment when coupled with the incredible power and flexibility of lots of different ways of visualizing things, and there are lots of different ways in Ardoq, block diagrams and relationship tables and lots of ways of getting to the same data and being able to explain things or explore. I think you win people over, and they understand you must have good quality data in there to underpin all of that, and that helps also with sharing it with other teams and other systems and so on. So that's been a really pivotal thing, I think, being able to take data that maybe originates from outside Ardoq, is mastered elsewhere, and visualize it. We said, I think, a couple of times on this call about there's a lot of power in being able to relate one set of information to another, being able to use the references in Ardoq to show how an application is impacted by something or relates to something else. And that sounds trivial in a way, but it's really powerful. I think that is the core of Ardoq, is this graph database and the incredible connectivity, that you can associate one set of data with another and see it, explore it, articulate things through that. So that's hugely powerful. And I must catch up with Venus about the success of democratization, because we've tried that. We're in the middle of pushing out surveys. We're sort of piloting that with some of our business owners, and we've had some successes, but also, yeah, there's definitely some friction there in how to get owners to accept ownership and to collaborate on that. But yeah, we're committed to making that successful, and to leveraging relationships and explaining the benefits to all parties of having that core information up to date.
Yeah. That's great. Definitely recommend the two of you trading stories with one another then. Lastly, Al, your perspective.
Yeah, well, as Peter was mentioning about data, let me kind of start with my thoughts on that, because I mean it's often an obvious thing we say, but like having the great EA tool doesn't solve all the problems, and that's certainly one of the kind of learnings we've got out of this. You get out of it what you put in. We've put a lot of time and effort in with the support of colleagues from Ardoq, making sure we've got the right data, the data quality, the integrations, to make sure it's useful and we get the insight needed. So it's not just buy a tool and hey, it magically works. You do have to think about that data and put in the time to get in the right data pulled in and the relationships created. So that was definitely kind of an important lesson that we got out of this. I think other than that, we had a big aha moment around the importance of executive support. So we've always had kind of good support from kind of senior figures, but actually that's really moved on and moved up to the executive leadership team in kind of recent times. So and that's where we've really seen it make a huge difference in terms of being at the table, being invited into work and conversations that maybe wouldn't otherwise have included us, and that's really enabled us to kind of move the practice forward, particularly over the last year or so. Just the amount of things we're involved in, the amount of view we've got across the organisation has really changed because of that executive support. And then I think the other thing I would call out is about governance. So we don't really see it as a misstep, but kind of a forced necessity at the start that we had to go heavy on governance and check everything. We had big drivers around application rationalization and but also making sure all of the governance processes were kind of put in place, because they'd been fairly lax or varied prior to that. So that was a big focus on going hard on governance, but the danger is you become a bit of a kind of police force for these things. So what we're seeing now is we've matured to the extent where we can look at it from a different angle. And what we're trying to do by having better views across the enterprise, as well as being engaged in all the new work that's starting and making sure we build out the strategies ahead of the delivery starting, but also having the standards and the patterns that the teams can apply and refer to. It means we're trying to move away from governance being a meeting and a meeting that we have to police every decision in, to actually we can take a risk-based approach, free up some of the EA time to get more of the upfront work going, and it almost becomes a virtuous circle that actually, once you free up that EA time, you can do more of the work in advance, and actually it's easier to govern everything. So that's a real progression we've seen, and that's been a real journey in terms of our architecture.
Thanks, Al. Really glad that you brought up both data quality and executive support. I think in many ways it starts and ends with both of those. If those aren't there, then the EA practice itself can only get so far, and in some cases not even launch. I do want to take just a moment as we wrap up to thank the three of you, Peter, Al, Venus. Really appreciate you sharing parts of your respective journeys with the audience today. I think it's a unique experience to hear from three senior enterprise architect and IT leaders from well-known organizations like ASDA, Invesco, Cabinet Office, and that you all share such similar challenges despite being in such different paths. Um, it's difficult to do, but if we take maybe three key takeaways for EA success that have been themes today through the course of this time, um, I'll share those now for the audience. Number one, evolution is essential. All three of the panelists today demonstrated EA practices and how they must continuously evolve. From ASDA's post-divestiture transformation to a business strategy focus. Al mentioned Invesco's shift from governance heavy to proactive partnership models. And Venus from Cabinet Office mentioned the move from centralized to a democratized data ownership. So we can see many of our customers' successful EA practices, they're always adapting to the changing organizational needs. The second takeaway is a business first approach drives value. The most mature practices have moved beyond technology centric views and they've moved to business driven strategies. Uh, Al mentioned Invesco's emphasis on understanding business problems before technology solutions, and ASDA's pivot to TCO metrics and business owner engagement. It shows that EA delivers its greatest value when it's anchored in business outcomes, not solving enterprise architecture challenges. And perhaps the last thing, proactive engagement will always beat reactive governance. All of you emphasize shifting from being EA police to being strategic partners that are embedded early in business conversations. We see this kind of proactive approach enables better outcomes almost every single time with our customers, and it reduces the governance burden on our teams. So, to the panelists that are here with me, it's really been an honor to host the three of you here who not only have really interesting stories, but you're also very valued customers of ours and have a lot of experience in enterprise architecture as a discipline. I want to thank you three and also thank the audience for listening. There will be more to come from Ardoq. So pay attention as more comes your way. But thank you all for listening for today, and goodbye for now.